Hello everyone, this is Kashri here from the Indian International Model United Nations. Before we begin, I would request all of you to give us attendance. That is, in the comments section, you need to write your name and the school. We will wait for another 2 minutes to let more people join us, and then we will begin this training session. You should just edit my thing now. I've written May, right name, and pin it to the top. Pin comment पे click करो.
Pin comment, but then I don't think you can edit it.
चलेगा. They understood it. Let's reach around 80 and then we'll be here. It's been 2 minutes. 1 more minute we'll wait. Alright, so now that we have successfully started this session, let me just begin with explaining you what this training session is all about. So today we will be understanding two things. A is the introduction to Model United Nations, and secondly, we will be doing a part of the rules of procedure. So that way you will understand what this entire conference is all about. In case at any time you have any difficulties or you're facing any problem or you need me to repeat something, all you need to do is just write your comment in the comment section, and that way I will know what your query is all about. So before I begin, does anybody have any issues? You can just write in the comment section or we will begin in the next 2 seconds. Alright, seeing none, we will start with the training session. So this training session is for the IIMUN United States of America conference that is going to take place in the month of August in the United States of America in the UN headquarters. So the first thing that all of you need to know is the place that we are visiting, that is the United Nations. So what we are going to do is, first I'm going to give you a brief about the United Nations. Before we understand what the United Nations is, it is very necessary to understand what is the word United Nations. Now, even before there were countries that came into existence, everybody needed a council of people to give them consultation, to tell them what they are doing is right or wrong. When a king is ruling a country or the world, he needs to know what is happening with the people in and around. In order to do that, they all had their council of ministers, or they had their team which used to guide them. Just like that, the United Nations is like a world government. It is that parliament where the governments or the leaders from across the globe come together to discuss international issues. Now, these issues are ranging from international peace and security to climate change to world peace and youth unemployment or poverty or hunger. But before we go deep into what the United Nations is, let's just go back a little bit to the history and see why was the United Nations formed. I'm sure all of you have heard about World War I that took place. Now, after the World War I, there was something called the League of Nations that had come into existence. Now, the League of Nations had been commenced in order to ensure that there is no World War II that takes place, because a world war leads to a lot of destruction, leads to the people losing their lives, leads to families being ruined. That is why it's but natural that they did not want a World War II to happen. But seeing how World War II did happen means that, of course, that the League of Nations failed. And one of the major reasons that League of Nations failed was because England was a superpower at that time, and B, not all the superpowers who were during the League of Nations time were a part of the League of Nations. So everyone did what they wanted to do. Nobody would listen and make sure that what the League of Nations is saying is put into practice. That is why today we have something called the United Nations. This was formed on the 24th of October 1945. When it came into existence, it had merely only 50 member nations as a part of the United Nations. Right now, it has 193 countries who are a part of the United Nations. Another thing that you should all know about are the 6 main organs of the United Nations. The first organ that the United Nations has is the General Assembly. Now, the General Assembly is the all good, right? The General Assembly is one of the organs that has the most number of member states. Now, all the 193 member states can be a part of the General Assembly. Okay, that's in the background noises. In case you guys are facing any problems, just write in the comment section. We are going to wait for just 1 minute so that everyone who's trying to connect is connected to the session. It's showing a lot of people are not being able to see it.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
on topic. You continue.
Hmm. Okay, before we resume again, does anyone have any questions to what we have discussed till now? If you have any questions, just comment section. I will wait for the next minute in case you have any questions before I resume the session again.
Are you connected on?
Alright, seeing that we have no questions. Okay, so for the people who have just logged in right now, we were discussing about the importance of the United Nations. Till now, just to give a small brief recap of what has happened, is that we have discussed the formation of the United Nations, and secondly, we are now discussing about the part where we are stating the principal organs of the United Nations. I'm sure all of you know that the United Nations came into existence on the 24th of October 1945 after the failure of League of Nations, and due to which the World War II had taken place. World War III that takes place, the United Nations was formed. Again, to reiterate, there are currently 193 member nations of United Nations, and we'll now go back to the UN General Assembly that we were discussing. The General Assembly may resolve non-compulsory recommendations to the states or the suggestions. Now, what does this mean? That any resolution or any solution that comes up in different committees may go to the General Assembly, where they will discuss it and make sure if they are fair enough, they will be recommended to the states. Otherwise, they've been discarded. So this is what one of the things that the General Assembly does. Also, all the country, that is all the member nations of the United Nations, are a part of the UN General Assembly. Secondly, the General Assembly also elects the non-permanent members of the UNSC, as well as all the members of ECOSOC. Okay? Now we move on to the second organ, that is the United Nations Security Council. Now this is the most important organ of the United Nations, primarily because it deals with the international security issues. The main reason why the UNSC exists is to maintain international peace and security. It may also adopt compulsory resolutions, which means that whatever solution comes up in the UN Security Council is given and has to be mandated by the countries who are a part of the resolution. Secondly, the United Nations Security Council has 15 members, which means out of this, 5 members are permanent members with veto power and 10 members are elected members. What is veto power? I'm sure most of you are aware. The veto power means that in case any suggestion that's been put forth by the member nations is not fair enough or is not applicable to the permanent members, they have a right to say no to it. So this is what the United Nations Security Council organ does. The third organ that we will be discussing is the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Now, what does the ECOSOC do? It deals with global economical and social affairs. It is also responsible for cooperation between states in regards to economic and social members. It has 54 members elected by the General Assembly to serve a staggered three-year mandate. The ECOSOC also coordinates and cooperates between the UN's numerous specialized agencies. So this is what the ECOSOC does. Moving on, the fourth organ that we will be discussing is the UN Secretariat. Now, the UN Secretariat is the administrative organ of the United Nations. What it does is it takes care of the working of the UN bodies administratively, for example, in the organization of conferences, writing of reports, studies, and the preparation of budget as well. The chairperson of the UN Secretariat is the UN Secretary General. Now, the UN Secretary General is elected by the General Assembly for a 5-year period and is the UN's foremost representative. You may understand the link between the Secretary General as a head of state of a country. So he is the one who speaks on behalf of the United Nations. Okay, moving on. The next organ that we will be discussing is the International Court of Justice. Now, this is the organ, the Universal Court for International Law. It decides disputes between states that recognize its jurisdiction. It deals with issues and it gives its legal opinions. It renders judgments by relative majority. Now, here it has 15 judges that are elected by the UN General Assembly for a term. Alright, now we will be moving on to the last organ of the United Nations, which is the UN Trusteeship Council. Why are we discussing this last? Because currently this organ is inactive. Originally, it was designed to manage the colonial possessions that were the former League of Nations, but it has been active since 1994. So these are the UN organs, and why you should know about all of this is because you will be entering the United Nations building, and it is very important for all of you guys to know that what is this building that you're entering, what are the parts of this building. Before I move on further, do you guys have any questions? We're going to wait for 1 minute for you to write whatever questions you have forward. Alright, so one of the questions that has come up is to give you all a brief about the ECOSOC again. So we will be repeating what is ECOSOC. Now, ECOSOC stands for the UN Economic and Social Council. The main reason why this council is in place is to solve economic, global, and social affairs. What it does is it is responsible for cooperation between the countries in regards to social matters as well as economic matters. Currently, it has 54 members, that is, it has 54 countries that are a part of this council, and these countries are elected by the General Assembly to serve for 3 years in this council. ECOSOC, what it also does is it coordinates UN's numerous specialized agencies. These specialized agencies are a part which are organizations that have affiliation with the United Nations. For example, if you start up your own NGO and you want to do something with the United Nations, or you want to do something that is inclined towards the ideals of the United Nations, you can write to the UN Economic and Social Council and you can get an affiliation as a specialized agency. So what it does is the ECOSOC also takes care of these specialized agencies throughout the world in order to tell people what the UN does, and in order to ensure that UN's does are kept. I hope this was clear about the ECOSOC. Okay, so is there any other questions that you all have? Okay, brilliant. So now we will move forward, which is to make you understand the importance of Model United Nations. Now we've explained you in brief what the United Nations does, but what you're going for is at the end of the day a Model United Nations conference. Okay, so I'm just seeing the comments again, and I'm really sorry for starting so fast. What we will do is I will repeat the fifth and the sixth organ again for everyone who missed out on it, and after that we will go on to the Model UN part. Okay, the fifth organ that we were discussing was the International Court of Justice. What is the International Court of Justice? It is a universal court for international law. Okay, so it is basically a judiciary body that decides disputes between states that recognize its jurisdiction. It gives its own legal opinions on matters that come into its existence. It renders judgment by majority. What does the ICJ have? Now it has 15 judges. Okay, so these judges are elected by the UN General Assembly for a period of 9 years. So this is what the International Court of Justice does. To put it into very simple words, you might think of the ICJ as a kind of like a Supreme Court for the United Nations. So here all the matters of international justice are discussed. The last organ that we had spoken about was the UN Trusteeship Council. Now this council is for administrating, trusting, and is to administer trust territories. What does this mean is that it was originally designed to manage colonial possessions that were the former League of Nations since 1994. So discussing council, but it was just to let you know what it is. Alright, so now I'm sure all your queries regarding the principal organs are over. Just in case you have more queries, you can always write it in the comment section and we will try to respond to that. Now moving forward, what we were discussing is the importance of Model UN. I'm sure that Most of you know what a model UN is, but even if there is one person who is not sure what is the meaning of model UN, we will explain it to them. Now, a model United Nations is an academic simulation of the United Nations. Now, what does this mean? This means that whatever the United Nations does, in whatever way it functions, a model United Nations is basically a replica of what the United Nations is. For example, the United Nations has various committees like or the Human Rights Council also has various committees where they are given a topic to discuss. Now, what does a model UN basically do? Now, each participant, that is each of you who are watching this video, every student who is a part of the Model United Nations Conference, he or she represents and role plays as a delegate or a diplomat of a particular nation. What does this mean? Now, it is very difficult to understand what is the role of a delegate or a diplomat of a country. You will no longer be A, B, or C, you will be representing a country. To explain you this furthermore, think of it as if you were given that the head of state of North Korea is Kim Jong-un. Now, if, say for example, in this conference you get to represent North Korea, you may have a lot of opinions as to how you will. Some of you might think that the ideologies or the country policies of North Korea is what you should adopt. Or some of you might think that you should adopt what the head of state of North Korea believes in. Now, it is not important that because you're North Korea, you only talk about nuclear weapons or things that have been wrong or done right by the North Koreans. What it ideally means is that your country policy, whatever you say, whatever you speak, should be related to what the country policy of the North Korea is. So this is what you should try and understand. What if you're given a country, India, you will not take from the point of view of what, but you will think from the point of view of what India stands for, the diplomatic relations of India. Okay, I can see that most of you are not able to again connect to the video. So we're going to wait just for 10 seconds so that everything is better, and then we'll start again. It's all right. Just to let all of you know that at the end of this session, we will have a recorded video of this very session put up on this page, so that all of you can download it or you can watch it again. So don't worry if you all cannot see anything. It's important that you all should hear what I'm trying to say. Okay, we will move forward. I will repeat the last part again, that is regarding so we will move on to what is the meaning of a delegate in the model United Nations. Now, so all of you will basically you will have to represent, and everybody will be a part of a committee. Now these committees will have various topics which are also known as agendas. So every committee will have its own agenda to speak about. Once you get your agenda and your country, you are then ready to research about what the whole so once you get your and you're ready to research about these three things, and that is when you will understand what your country topic is all about. Okay, so we'll move forward to how does an MUN basically work. Now, a Model UN conference is a 3 or 4 day event, but at your conference, the conference that you guys will be attending, it's basically a 3 day MUN conference, wherein first day we will be having something called an opening ceremony, where inaugurating this conference, followed by the rest of the time, that is 3 days of debates, committee sessions. Now at the end of the day, at the end of the conference, you that you all were, which is also called a resolution. And once you pass that resolution, there will be something called a closing ceremony, which is to put all to close. So this is how usually a Model UN conference works. Who participates in a Model UN conference, gathers in a room called the committee room, and then we start with the debate. The discussion would go on as rules of procedure that are being followed. These rules of procedure is what we are going to be discussing next. But just to give you a small brief about Model UN, the main aim participating or being in a Model UN conference is so that the participants get educated about the various civics or current issues and even get to know what is the exact meaning of diplomacy. Alright, in case you have any problems till now you can write it in the comment section, and then we will start with the rules of procedure. Okay, so now we will begin with exactly making you understand what is the rules of procedure. Now think of the rules of procedure as a code of conduct or a timetable that is followed in the Model UN conference. Everybody, that is from the organizers to the students to the observers, everybody has to follow these rules of procedure to be a part of the Model UN conference. Now the first clause of the rule of procedure is called representation. And vote. In some committees there is something called a double delegation, that is one or more delegates, that is two delegates represent one country. But even if you are two people as a part of a single country, you will only have one vote. So this is what the vote representation of a country is all about. Now students who are NGOs or special observers, they can vote on working papers, NGO or the special observer, then only they can work or they can vote on working papers, amendments and resolutions. If it does not concern them, then they cannot vote on these three parameters. So this is what representation is all about. Now, in case you have, if you are not a country, but you are, say, a minister or you are representing a person or a head of state in the committee, even then you will have only one vote. Okay? Moving on, the next clause that we have is called applicability. That is, the rules in the RoP are simulated in the Indian International Model UN or its affiliated conference. If you are in a conventional UN committee, say for IIMUN, UNS, or say a few Lok Sabha committee, even then these rules are all applicable to the conference. So if there is any deviation from the rules, then you must have a written permission from the Secretary General of the organization to deviate from any of the rules, which means that you should get it in writing from the president of our organization, who is also the Secretary General of the organization, to that you can deviate. Next clause is called language. Here, officially, the language that we follow is English, but there are 5 more official languages allowed, which is Chinese or Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish, and French. The delegates can also utilize Hindi or any other regional language by submitting a written request of at least 14 days prior to the conference. They will have to submit it to the Secretary General of the organization that they want to use any other language than the ones mentioned above. Here, if you are days that we have asked you so that we could make the proper arrangements. Okay, now the next the next clause states as attire. Now the attire means what are the clothes that you're going to be wear or what should be your formal attire at the IIMUN conference. There are two usually according to the IIMUN, that is A1 or A2 can be formals or it could be Western formals. Now especially for boys, Western formals include say formal trousers, a shirt, a formal tie and also a blazer. And for girls, the formal attire is not officially defined in the rules of procedure, but it could be similar to the one that we've described for the boys, which means that you can also wear trousers, formal shirt and a blazer on top. Ideally, we have day 1 or day 3 as Western formals and day 2 as traditional formals. Itinerary that is provided to you. Now, before we move on to the next point, the rules of procedure. Okay, so now we will move forward to the next point. So the next clause is called use of electronic equipment. Now, since the inception of IIMUN, since these rules were put into existence, IIMUN has never allowed electronic equipment to be used during formal sessions. But from this year onwards, we've made a change. We are going to electronic during committee sessions. However, there is a golden rule that you should follow is that if you are caught with using committee barred from the room. So as long as you are using your electronic devices, what is happening in the committee that is relating to the agenda or relating to your speech or taking notes, it's allowed. But the minute you start using it for your own entertainment, that is for internet, we will take it away. So make sure that while you're using the electronic equipment, you do not use internet. This is done so that we are also trying to take the green initiative and trying to reduce the use of paper during our conferences. So we would like everyone to be a part of electronic equipment during the committee session. During breaks, however, they are free to do what they want with their equipments. They're going to be speaking about is called sessions. Now, what are these sessions? These sessions are basically the committee hours. These sessions only the debate is on, or you are doing something to the model UN. Say, for example, start your day at 9 a.m. Then every session that we have will be a maximum of 3 hours, which is followed by a break of 10 minutes. So at a stretch, you will not be in a formal session for more than 3 hours. Like these 3 hours, like this one session, for the entire conference, there will be a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 10 sessions that will be there during the conference. Okay, now we will be moving forward to the 7th procedure, which is called executive board. Now the executive board is basically the people who judge the committee sessions. They are the ones who moderate the committee sessions. They are there to help and guide you as well during the session. Now, the decision of the executive board is final and binding on all delegates. Okay, the decision of the executive board can be challenged, but there are only specific ways how you can challenge the executive board. These ways will be that whatever is final for the delegates. If a delegate is behaving in any unparliamentary manner or he is misbehaving in the committee session, delegate to being barred from the council, but only after 3 warnings are given by the executive board members. Until 3 warnings are not given, the delegate cannot be barred by the executive board. The executive board can question any delegate, ask them for any justification or clarification on any statements that the delegates make. So this is basically what the executive board does. The executive board is mentioned are the committee sessions. They are the people who the committees. So they ensure that the committee moves in the proper direction so that everyone reaches a final solution at the end of the day. The next clause that we will be discussing is called appeal. Now, as I mentioned before, there are 2 ways in which the delegate can challenge the executive board. Now, one of the ways, the subtle way of doing it, is via appeal. Now, appeal is used for if the satisfied with the decision in them. Now be careful, the executive board member may also be referred to as chairs. So if someone says chair, that means that they are referring to the executive board members. However, there is a process in which the appeal works. If you want to appeal to the executive board member, then you need to use these following words. The words would be as follows. To appeal to the chair. So once you say this line, means that you would like to appeal to the executive board. Now, if you're recognized and given permission by the executive board, you get exactly 1 minute to address the grievance that you have to the chair. Now, the chair has the decision whether he wants to take it into consideration or not. If he does not take it into consideration, and you that your grievance is not resolved, then you have two pleas that you can use as follow-ups to raise to the executive board member. That means you can have two follow-up pleas to the original one appeal that you have made in order to address your issue to the executive board member. So this is how appeal works for If you all have any questions regarding what has happened for till now, you all can ask me. Okay, moving forward, the second way, that is the 9th point of the rules of procedure, is the second way that someone can challenge the executive board member. The 9th clause states as impeachment for the very disruptive manner in which a delegate can challenge the executive board member. It is basically to remove the executive board member from the committee. A very volatile method if it is used for. This is the process in which a delegate can impeach the executive board member is as follows. The delegate needs a written request by 2/3 of the members of the committee, and so the request could be by asking 2/3 of the members to sign on a piece of paper, and that piece of paper should be submitted to the Director General of the conference. He will pass on this information to the General of the conference to give the matter. So even if a delegate is successful in getting a 2/3 of the committee to write an impeachment request, it will only be approved by the Secretary General of the conference. You have to make sure that the Secretary General gives a go ahead before you can rely on the fact that you are an executive board member. The next clause in the rules of procedure is called organizing council. Now the organizing council is very similar to what I had explained you earlier as a part of the UN. It was called the UN Secretariat. So the similar way, the organizing council is a group that of the conference. There is United Nations. There is also a head for the organizing council. The head of the organizing council is called the Director General of the organizing council. So any problem in terms of when you write your impeachment, as we discussed earlier, if you have that paper, you need to go to the Director General, give it to the Secretary General. Now the organizing council has a very special role in the conference, as much as they are the ones who help in the flow of the conference. If the organizing council finds any delegate to behave in a way which is not acceptable, then the organizing council can report that to the director general's can bring that to the director general's notice, and the director general can bar the delegate from the entire conference. This is the final decision of the director. Now, what does the director general do? Director general has a say in every matter that is not related to the debate of the conference. So, on the matters of organizing of the conference, the director general has a final say. Now the Secretary General of the conference has sweeping powers, that is, his or her decision is final and binding in all matters concerning debate. Okay, so basically everything that is related to debate is decided by the Secretary General. The 12th of the rules of procedure is stated as president. Now the president is also the head of the organization or the Secretary General of the organization. If anybody is not satisfied with the verdict of the Director General or the Secretary General, then a written request can be made to the President's office. This be on the IIMUN letterhead. It should be stamped and signed and then sent to the President's office within 7 days from the happening of the event. Now, once this letter is submitted, the President of the organization work on the matter and come back with a decision. If it is not submitted in the format that we have just mentioned, then it will not be acceptable. The rules of procedure that we have discussed, have mentioned before, we will be putting the recorded version of this video for everyone to. You can also read these rules of procedure on our. We will be posting a link to the as well, and you can come back to us if you have any problems regarding the rules of procedure. So this is where we end the. We will over email. You can write to us, and we will ensure that we reply to you as soon as possible. So thank you so much everyone for joining today to our training session. We will be keeping you in loop about the other training sessions as soon as possible. Thank you. Have a nice day ahead.